My mother doesn't know my name anymore. She knows Tuesday. That's the day I show up, and that's the only day she trusts anyone at all. My sister set it up that way. One day a week. Easy to hide, easy to control. She's been paying herself out of our mother's account to do a job I do for free. I found out by accident, going through mail nobody was supposed to see. The woman meant to be there the other 6 days doesn't exist. My name's Renee. I'm a physical therapist, and I've spent 3 years believing my sister when she said she had it handled. You're late, my mother said, without turning from the window. The bus is loud today. There is no bus. Her building sits on a cul-de-sac, 2 miles from anything with wheels. I set the grocery bags on the counter and didn't correct her. Because Tuesdays are for showing up, not for winning arguments with a mind that's already left the room. I brought the peaches you like, I said. Carol doesn't bring peaches. I'm not Carol, Mom. I'm Renee. You're the one who comes on Tuesdays, she said. Like that settled it, like a name was a luxury she'd traded for something more useful. She patted the couch cushion next to her, without looking at me, and I sat, and for a second, that was enough. Did you eat breakfast, Mom? I had toast. There was no bread in the house. I'd checked the kitchen on my way in, out of habit more than suspicion. Back then, an empty bread box, a fridge with milk gone sour, and not much else, the kind of emptiness that comes from nobody restocking, rather than nobody eating. What kind of toast? The good kind, she said, which wasn't an answer, and I let it go, because some Tuesdays you pick your battles, and some Tuesdays you don't have any battles left in you to pick. She reached for my hand without looking. The way she used to reach for it, crossing streets, when I was 6. An old reflex, outlasting the memory that built it. Her fingers were cold. I rubbed them between mine without saying anything about it, and she let me, watching the window like the bus might actually come. The phone rang before I got the peaches into a bowl. Carol, my older sister, the one who'd taken over Mom's accounts 2 years back after Dad died, never called except to check whether I'd noticed anything. How is she today? Carol asked, already sounding like she was somewhere else, dishes clinking behind her voice. She thinks there's a bus outside. That's new. It's not new, Carol. You'd know that if you came by. I don't have to come by. That's what Marisol's for. A pause, the clink of a cabinet closing. I'm paying good money for that woman to be there Monday through Saturday. You're there Sundays and Tuesdays because you like it. Don't act like I'm not carrying this. I didn't say anything. I looked at the counter, at the dust sitting undisturbed on the toaster, at the calendar with nothing written on it since March, and I let her hang up first. I hadn't planned on the mail. I only noticed it because the drawer under the phone stand wouldn't close, jammed with envelopes nobody had opened in weeks. Bank statements, a notice from an insurance company, 3 from the pharmacy. I told myself I was straightening up. That's not really true. I was looking for something, even before I knew what. Who are these people? My mother said, watching me from the couch, meaning the faces on the pharmacy flyer, and I said, nobody, Mom, and kept sorting. There was a name on one of the statements I didn't recognize, a payroll deposit, twice a month, made out to a name that wasn't Marisol's. I folded it and put it in my bag before I decided to, the way your hands sometimes move faster than your reasons do. My son called that night, while I was still parked outside my own building, engine off, not ready to go in. You okay? Jonah asked, 19, home from his first year at state, worried about me in the specific way kids get worried when they've started noticing their parents are people. Fine, just tired. You always say that on Tuesdays. I laughed, because he wasn't wrong, and because it was easier than telling him what was folded in my bag. The house Carol grew up ruling was the same house she still ran from a distance, and some habits don't die just because the people involved got older. When we were girls, Carol got the good room, the piano lessons, the benefit of every doubt our mother had left over after a long day. I got the chores and the compliments that came with them. Steady, capable, doesn't need looking after. Mom used to say it like praise. It took me 20 years to hear it as a warning. Mark used to say I confused being needed with being loved. He said it once, early, half a joke. And then he said it again years later, not joking at all, right before he told me he and Carol had been talking. Not an affair yet, he swore, just talking. And I remember thinking that even his confessions sounded like something borrowed from her, phrased the way she phrased everything, softened at the edges so you couldn't quite object to it. "You're serious," I said to him that night in a kitchen that used to be ours. My ex-husband, 6 months from being an ex, still standing in a doorway like he had a right to be uncomfortable in it. "Renee, nothing's happened. You just told me something happened." "I told you nothing's happened yet. I didn't throw anything. People expect that part, the drama of it, and I've learned to disappoint them. I packed a bag instead, methodically, the way I do everything, and by the time the divorce was final, Carol had stopped answering my calls the way sisters do, and started answering them the way lawyers do. Brief, careful, allergic to admitting anything. That was 4 years before Dad's heart gave out, and Mom's mind started following behind it. Slower, but going the same direction. The pharmacy statement sat in my bag for a week before I did anything about it. I told myself I was busy. I told myself it was probably nothing. A typo, a former employee, a name that meant less than it looked like it meant. What I actually did was drive past the pharmacy on my lunch break 3 separate days and never go in until the 4th day, when I finally did. "I'm trying to understand a payment on my mother's account," I told the girl at the counter, sliding the statement across like it was a question instead of an accusation. "You'd need to talk to billing. That's not really something I can—" "I'm not asking you to break any rules. I'm asking if the name on this looks familiar. Marisol Vega. Does she work here? Pick up prescriptions? Anything?" The girl looked at the name, looked at me, and something in her face went careful, in a way that told me more than an answer would have. "I really can't say," she said, and I believed the can't more than I wanted to. I didn't tell Carol I'd gone. I didn't tell anyone. I went to my mother's the following Tuesday, like always, and I watched her hands shake around a coffee cup she insisted on holding herself. And I thought about how much of caregiving is just watching someone lose a fight in slow motion and pretending you're not counting the days. "Where's the other one?" my mother asked, out of nowhere, halfway through lunch. "Which other one, Mom?" "The one who comes when you don't." My stomach did something complicated. "Marisol?" She frowned, like the name didn't fit right in her mouth. "I don't like her shoes," she said, which wasn't an answer, and then she went back to her sandwich like the whole exchange had already left her, a door closing somewhere behind her eyes. I didn't like her shoes. Not I don't like her. The shoes. A detail too specific to be nothing, too strange to build a case out of. I filed it away with the payroll name, and the untouched calendar, and the dust on the toaster. A small pile of things that didn't add up to an accusation yet, only to a feeling I didn't have a name for. The neighbor, Ruth, caught me on my way out that afternoon, hedge clippers still in her hand, sun hat pushed back off her forehead. "You're the Tuesday one," she said, which was how everyone on that street had started referring to me, as if Tuesday were a job title. "That's me. I keep meaning to ask, is your mother doing all right through the week? I don't see anyone coming and going, not the way you'd expect for someone needing help. No car in that driveway besides yours and your sister's, and hers only on holidays. There's supposed to be someone, an aide. Ruth's face did something careful, the same careful I'd seen on the pharmacy girl. Well, I'm sure I just missed them. I'm not out here every hour. Have you ever seen her, the aide? I couldn't say I have, Ruth admitted, and went back to her hedge like she regretted starting the conversation. And I stood on the sidewalk a moment longer, feeling the pile of small wrong things get heavier without getting any clearer. 3 weeks after the pharmacy, I called the home care agency Carol claimed to be paying, found the number on an old invoice stuffed in the same overstuffed drawer, and asked, as calmly as I could manage, to confirm a caregiver's current schedule. I'm sorry, could you spell that name again? Marisol Vega. There was a pause long enough that I heard someone else's phone ringing in the background of wherever she was sitting. We don't have anyone by that name on staff, current or past. Are you sure you have the right agency? I read her the account number off the invoice. She read it back to me. Correct. Matched to my mother's address. Matched to a service plan billed at $420 a week. And matched to exactly 0 visits logged in the last 11 months. Ma'am, are you the client's daughter? Yes. You might want to speak with whoever's managing the account. There hasn't been an active caregiver assigned here since last October. I sat in my car outside the pharmacy for a long time after that call, not driving anywhere, watching people go in and come out with small white bags, feeling something in my chest reorganize itself into a shape I didn't like. 11 months. 11 months of my mother alone, 5 days a week, in a house with an unwritten calendar and a jammed mail drawer, while somebody's payroll deposit landed twice a month like clockwork. And while I drove over every Tuesday and every other Sunday and told myself the schedule was fair because Carol said it was, I called Carol that night. I didn't plan the words. They came out flat, which surprised me more than her answer did. There's no caregiver, I said. There hasn't been one in almost a year. Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Where did you get that? I called the agency, Carol. They don't have a Marisol. They haven't sent anyone since October. You had no right to call them. I had every right. She's my mother too. She's mine to manage, Carol said. And there it was. The whole shape of it, in one sentence, the thing she'd never said out loud before because she'd never had to. Dad put me on the accounts. Not you, me. I'm the one who deals with the lawyers, and the insurance, and you're the one taking money for a service that doesn't exist. You don't know what you're talking about. I know Mom hasn't seen anyone but me in a year. I know there's a name on a paycheck that isn't attached to a real person doing real work. Tell me what part of that I'm getting wrong. You have no idea what it costs to keep her in that house, the property taxes alone. Then show me the property tax bills, Carol. Show me anything. Show me one receipt for one thing that isn't a payroll deposit to a ghost. Don't call her a ghost. I'm not talking about Mom. There was a long breath on the other end, ragged, and for a second I thought she might actually say something true. You always do this, she said instead. You find one thing and you build a courtroom out of it. It's not that simple. Then make it simple. Tell me where the money went. I don't have to explain myself to you. Dad chose me for the accounts, not you. Dad's been dead 4 years, Carol. He didn't choose a ghost either. She hung up. I sat with the dial tone a long time before I put the phone down. And somewhere under the anger was something quieter and worse. The sense that I'd known, in the shape my body knows things before my head catches up, for longer than I'd let myself admit. I didn't sleep. Around 2 in the morning, I found myself back at the kitchen table, with every statement I'd pulled from that drawer spread out in front of me, dates lined up like evidence in a case I hadn't decided to build yet. The payroll deposits went back further than 11 months, almost 2 years, in fact. Small and regular, 420 a week, sometimes a little more around holidays, as if whoever was cashing them had a conscience that occasionally required a bonus. 2 years. 2 years of a fictional woman's shoes my mother didn't like. Jonah found me there in the morning, still in yesterday's clothes, and didn't ask what was wrong so much as sit down across from me and wait. Grandma's been alone, I told him, this whole time. Aunt Carol's been taking the money, and there's been nobody there. He didn't say anything for a second. Then, are you going to call the police? I don't know yet. You should. It's not that simple, baby. Why not? She stole from Grandma. I didn't have a good answer for him. I still don't. Not really, though I understand it better now than I did that morning, sitting across from my son with statements fanned out between us like a losing hand of cards. The next Tuesday, I went to Mom's early, before Carol would expect anyone there. And I did something I'd never done before. I went through the house properly, not tidying, not pretending. I found more mail. I found a folder in the bottom of the linen closet with older bank records, records I hadn't known to look for, records that told a story going back further than I wanted it to. And I found, tucked behind a stack of towels my mother hadn't used in a year, a business card, a lawyer's name I didn't recognize, Frank Delacroix, elder law. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, still steady then, still hers, a date from 14 months ago, and 3 words, ask about Tuesdays. I stood there holding it for a long time, the towels smelling like a closet nobody opened anymore, my mother humming something tuneless in the next room, and I understood I'd found the edge of something bigger than a missing caregiver. Mom, I said, coming back into the living room, kneeling by her chair, the card still in my hand. Who's Frank Delacroix? She looked at the card like it belonged to a stranger, turned it over once, twice. He had good handwriting, she said finally. For a lawyer. Did you go see him? About Tuesdays? Something moved behind her eyes, quick, almost gone before I caught it. Not memory exactly, more like the ghost of one, passing through a room it used to live in. Ask Frank, she said. Not me. I don't remember anymore. That's the whole point, isn't it? It took me 4 days to get Frank Delacroix on the phone, and another 2 before he'd agree to see me in person. Careful. The way lawyers are careful about people who show up asking questions on someone else's behalf. I can't discuss a client's file with you, he said, before I'd even sat down. Even if she is your mother. I understand. I'm not asking you to break confidentiality. I found your card in her house with a note in her own handwriting. I just want to know if she came to see you. He studied me for a moment, the particular look of a man deciding how much silence counts as an answer. I can tell you this much, he said finally. 14 months ago, your mother came to my office alone, by cab, and she was, in my professional assessment at the time, entirely of sound mind. She had concerns about how her finances were being handled. She asked me to prepare some documents. What documents? That I can't tell you. Not without her authorization, and given her current condition, that's complicated. She's not incompetent, if that's what you're implying. She has good days. I'm aware. That's part of what makes it complicated. He folded his hands on the desk. What I can tell you, because it isn't privileged information exactly, it's a matter of process, is that the documents were never finalized. She scheduled a follow-up appointment to sign them. She never came back. Why not? I don't know. People change their minds, or something changes it for them. I thought about the second half of that year, the beginning of the real decline, the fall that put her in the hospital for 11 days, the fog that came in after and never fully lifted, 14 months ago, right around when the fictional Marisol Vega's paychecks would have started, if my 2 years of numbers lined up the way I thought they did. Mr. Delacroix, I said, is there any way those documents could still matter if she never signed them? He was quiet for a moment. Draft documents aren't binding, but drafts show intent. Intent, at a time when she was demonstrably competent, matters more than you'd think in the right proceeding. If you're thinking what I believe you're thinking, you'll want an attorney of your own. I can't be that attorney, conflict of interest, but I can give you a name. I left his office with a name and a photocopy of the appointment log, the only piece of paper he could legally hand me, and I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time before I could make myself drive. Carol called twice that week, and I let both calls go to voicemail. The first was short, brittle. "Call me back, Renee. This is ridiculous." The second, 2 days later, was different. Softer, tired, in a way I hadn't heard from her since we were kids, and she'd get sick and stop performing being older than me for a few days. "I know you talked to the agency," she said, into the silence of my not answering. "I know you're angry. You don't understand what it's been like, managing all of it alone, while you get to just show up and be the nice one." I needed the money, Renee. Not for anything terrible, just life got expensive, and it felt like she owed me, after everything I gave up staying local when you left for school. I was going to pay it back. I still can. I didn't call her back, not because I didn't believe her. Some of it I did believe, the resentment at least, the old ledger between us that never balanced the way either of us wanted, but because I'd learned, slowly and expensively, that Carol's honesty always arrived with a bill attached. I met with the new attorney, a woman named Priya Anand, the following week. Statements and photocopies spread across her desk the way they'd been spread across my kitchen table. "You have two separate issues here," Priya said, tapping the stack. "One is financial exploitation, misuse of power of attorney, fraudulent billing, potentially elder abuse depending on how a prosecutor wants to frame it. That's a serious case, and it's winnable. The other issue is care. Your mother needs consistent, funded, competent care right now, today, regardless of what happens with your sister." I want both. I know you do. But I want you to understand something before we go further. Those two goals can work against each other. If you go hard after your sister criminally, this could take years. Discovery, hearings, maybe a trial. Your mother's care needs can't wait years, and realistically, the money that would pay for her care is the same money tied up in the case against Carol. So I choose. You don't have to choose everything today, but you should know what you're choosing between. She leaned back. I've seen families destroy themselves chasing the satisfaction of watching someone lose and end up broke and exhausted and no closer to actually taking care of the person who needed it in the first place. You don't think she deserves consequences? I think consequences and care aren't the same project, even when they feel like they should be. I've had clients spend $80,000 in legal fees to win a judgment against a sibling who then declares bankruptcy the week after, and the client's parent is still sitting in a facility on Medicaid because there was nothing left to actually pay for anything better. Winning and helping aren't always the same verb. What would you do if it were your mother? Priya considered that longer than I expected. Honestly, I'd want to burn it down, and then I'd probably do exactly what I'm telling you to do, because wanting and needing aren't the same thing either. She slid a folder across the desk. This is a rough outline of what a civil recovery could look like, versus a criminal referral, versus both run in parallel at a slower pace. Read it. Sleep on it. Nothing has to happen today. I thought about my mother's handwriting on the back of that business card. Ask about Tuesdays. Not ask about Carol, not a demand for punishment, just a woman trying, in whatever clarity she had left, to protect something before the fog took the rest of her. What if I go after the money civilly? I said slowly. Recover what I can, use it to fund her care immediately, and let the criminal piece be Carol's problem to worry about separately. Report it, let it exist, but not make it the center of everything I do for the next 2 years. Priya nodded like she'd been waiting for me to get there on my own. That's a reasonable plan. It's not the plan that makes you feel the most vindicated, but it's the plan that gets your mother taken care of the fastest. I went to see Mom the next Tuesday, with all of it sitting heavy in my chest, and found her having a good day, the kind that used to be more common, and now felt like a gift I hadn't earned. You look tired, she said, patting the seat beside her. And for once, she said it looking right at me, present, in a way that made my throat tight. It's been a hard couple of weeks, Mom. Is it Carol? I froze. What makes you say that? It's always Carol, she said, simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, like some part of her, underneath all the fog, had never actually forgotten the shape of us, who took and who gave, who was seen and who was useful, the whole architecture of our family built before either of us had a say in it. I should have signed those papers. My whole body went still. You remember the papers? I remember not signing them, she said, and there was something almost wry in it, a flash of the mother who used to run a classroom of 38-year-olds without raising her voice once. I remember thinking I had time. Mom, I found the lawyer. I talked to him. Good, she said, and reached over and patted my hand, twice, the way she used to when I was small and had done something she was proud of and didn't have the words for yet. You always were the one who finished things. It wasn't a full return. An hour later, she asked me again who I was, gently, apologetically, like she knew she should know and the not knowing embarrassed her. But for that hour, she'd been there, entirely, and I understood I'd remember it long after I'd forgotten most of the ordinary Tuesdays that came before and after it. The civil case took 5 months, not years, mostly because Carol's own attorney advised her that fighting it in open court, with an agency willing to testify there'd been no caregiver on record for 2 years, was a losing bet dressed up as a principal. She settled. It wasn't everything. Priya had warned me it wouldn't be, but it was enough to fund real, licensed, actually showing up care 5 days a week, with money left over that I put toward the parts of Mom's care that insurance had never touched. Carol and I haven't spoken since the settlement papers were signed. She sent one email, 3 lines long, that said she hoped I was happy and that she'd always known I thought I was better than her. I read it twice and didn't answer, because I finally understood something it took me 38 years to understand. That being the one who finishes things was never proof I was better. It was just proof I was the one who stayed. Jonah asked me, months later, over dinner, whether I regretted not pushing for more. The criminal case, the fuller reckoning, the version of this where Carol actually paid for what she'd done, in some way that showed up on a record somewhere. Some days, I told him honestly. Most days I don't. Most days I think about the aide who actually shows up now, the one who calls me if Grandma has a bad afternoon, the ramp we put in so she doesn't fall on the porch steps anymore. That's not nothing. That's most of what I actually wanted, underneath the part of me that wanted Carol to hurt. Did she ever say sorry? For real? Not the email? No. Do you think she will? I think some people spend so long being the one who's excused that saying sorry starts to feel like admitting the excuses were never true. I don't know if Carol has that in her. I used to think I did, and look how long it took me. He didn't have an answer for that, and I didn't need him to. We sat with it, the two of us. The way you sit with something that isn't finished and isn't going to be, Not neatly, not on anyone's schedule, but times. My mother doesn't remember any of it now. Not the lawyer, not the agency, not the hours she spent entirely present, holding my hand and calling me the one who finished things. Some Tuesdays, she knows me the second I walk in. Some Tuesdays, I'm just the woman who brings the peaches. I've stopped needing it to be more than that. Whatever's left of her, however she arrives at the door of her own mind on any given day, I'll take it, unpaid and unprotected and entirely mine, because some things you don't do to be seen for it. I kept the business card, though. Frank Delacroix's handwriting on the front, my mother's on the back. Ask about Tuesdays. I keep it in the drawer by my own front door now, the one that doesn't jam, where I'll see it every time I leave to go to her. A reminder that even a fading mind can leave you a map if you're paying enough attention to find it before it's too late to matter.